Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Black Press Live with our publishers, our distinguished publishers, talking about the day's events, talking about their publications. Today we have James Madison of the Florida Sun, founded in 1931. The Florida Sun is the oldest African American newspaper in Central Florida. It is a community newspaper utilizing both staff and freelance writers for content that captures social and political commentary that is relevant to the local Black community. We also have Pluria Marshall Jr. of the Wave newspapers in the Los Angeles area. Founded in 1912, the Wave is the largest group of community newspapers in Los Angeles. Highly recognized for quality news, 1.2 million people choose the Wave each week. Their reach goes north to the Hollywood Hills, south to Carson, east to Whittier, and west to Culver City. They are proud to be a part of the most diverse and eclectic neighborhoods in the greater Los Angeles area. Welcome, Pluria Marshall Jr. and Munson Steve. I'm sorry, Munson Steve is supposed to join us, but we have James Madison, who we are so grateful to have. James, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy.
So it's good to have you guys. So actually, let's just go out west and let's start with Pluria. Pluria, what's the Wave up to these days? What's the latest? What are you covering right now?
Well, I mean, we, as you mentioned, Stacy, we have a very eclectic group of communities that we cover. Pretty much all kind of what we call hard news, not a lot of soft, kind of fluffy stuff, and nothing other than George Floyd, and all the murder and mayhem that Black folks have been experiencing for centuries is finally coming home to roost, with white people saying, "My God, we didn't know," and we all know that they've known, but for whatever reason, the heinous act that happened to Mr. Floyd was just, I mean, it was painful to watch, and that's what has sparked all of this uprising for Black folks. And quite frankly, it's the general market people that have joined Black Lives Matter and all of us in bringing awareness to this heinous and senseless act.
Yeah. Pluria Marshall Jr., we know that you've been a strong voice, not just with this crisis that's going on, but it's been a hallmark of your career. We're going to talk more about that in a moment. We're joined now by Brian Townsend. Brian, welcome. And Brian, we'll come back to you in a moment, but I want to go out down south from me anyway to Florida with Jim. Jim, what's the latest with you guys? What's the big scoop out there?
Well, basically, we're also working on the protesters and marchers. As a matter of fact, this week we had the Florida Restoration Coalition and the Motorcycle Council participated in a march for racial justice. So in addition to regular marchers, we have the cyclists also marching. So basically, since it's such a big subject, in addition to COVID-19, we're pretty much covering what most everybody else is doing, the march and the virus.
Absolutely. And we're joined now by Brian Townsend of the Precent Reporter in San Bernardino, California. The Precent Reporter was founded in 1965 by Art Townsend, who was installed in the Black Press Hall of Fame. Yes. Brian, you guys have been a mainstay. What's the latest that the Precent Reporter is covering?
Well, the main thing for us is the hanging in Victorville and in Palmdale. Victorville is in our circulation area. Palmdale is not literally in our circulation area. We're kind of letting the community speak. We join them in calling for an independent investigation. There's just so much controversy going on now as we try and deal with the police brutality issues, and such a great nationwide effort to finally bring change in this regard. And now we've got to figure out if we're being lynched or not. We are a newspaper, so we're not claiming outright that the gentlemen were lynched, but we certainly want to make sure that we are absolutely sure that they were not that is the case. We're not going to just assume that because we can't tell for sure that it was a suicide. So we want to know for sure, 100%, that it was a suicide before we will even claim that that's a possibility.
Yeah, and Pluria Marshall Jr., I want to go back to you and pick up on this conversation, because that is those hangings that Brian Townsend was talking about. It's not outside of your coverage scope either. When you think about that, we have the protests, of course, as you mentioned, the COVID-19. This has not been the best of times for African Americans, has it, Pluria?
No, it has not. But you know, if we want to thank God for something, let's thank God for cell phones and cell phone video, because now, you know, back, you know, we've had websites and things of that sort for, you know, probably 2 decades easy. And there used to be a term, I'm sure Brian and Jim can remember this, called user generated content. User generated content, and it was basically content that was generated by readers, and the advertisers were like, oh no, we cannot support this, not going to happen. And now everything, the predominance of content on YouTube, things that come out from the mainstream media is user generated content, and they don't call it that now. It's just cell phone video and things of that sort. But ultimately, this is a game changer, and the entire world is producing user-generated content that can actually help all people. You know, now obviously with the protests that have happened, obviously in America, it's spread across the globe. I mean, there is no continent that has not had some type of protest, because Black people, you know, whether you're Arab Black, African Black, American Black, you know, Australian Black, the Aboriginal people, you know, if you got color, pigment in your skin, you are considered Black in most cases. And you know, that is what I think is the unifying force across all of this. You know, and if people are sick of it, you know, it's horrible. If you guys ever watch soccer in Europe, these folks, the opposing fans, the Black players, they throw banana peels. They say all kinds of vile things. And a young kid from America went over to play in Europe, and he couldn't figure out what they were saying. He thought they were booing this one player every time he would be on the pitch and have the ball, but it wasn't a boo. It was a hoo, 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 hoo. It was a monkey sound. Now,
Wow.
this is a man who makes millions of dollars a year, who is a star player, but he's Black, you know, and that's a problem that has always permeated all of Europe. You know, they had slaves, but ours was either more concentrated, more pronounced, or whatever. But ultimately, you know, that is something that they've always dealt with. And now the Premier League and the league in Germany are all going to deal with this. Think about this: NASCAR is taking down the freaking Confederate flag. Whoever thought that would ever happen? You know, they want to have Black folks involved, and you know, there's always some there, but not a lot. So, you know, the world has reached the proverbial tipping point, and let's hope and pray that positive outcomes from a legal standpoint will be set forth.
Yeah, and we will be taking, just so our viewers will know, we will be taking their questions. Kelly Gordon has checked in, Annette Phillips, one of our regular viewers. She has been loyal to this program. She's checked in. Hi, Annette. Louis Antonio, John Muller of the Washington Informer, Robert McCrae has also checked in. I'd like for the publishers, we're talking to 3 of our distinguished publishers, Pluria Marshall Jr. of the Wave newspapers, is Jim out there with the Florida Sun, and Brian Townsend in San Gabriel. I'd like for you to discuss this openly. Today, for instance, PepsiCo and Quaker announced that they were going to remove Aunt Jemima products, and that whole stereotypical image of Aunt Jemima. They announced a $400 million initiative for the Black community. You have Hulu and Ben and Jerry's and so many others in corporate America, Target, announcing these Comcast, $100 million, announcing these initiatives now and putting out these statements condemning what happened with George Floyd and supporting Black Lives Matter. What does that mean to you guys as publishers, as Black business owners?
Well, I have a comment on that, especially as far as naming the military bases. It was kind of unusual, or I guess not with this particular president, that he did not want to even consider changing the name of some of these bases when it was brought out that actually these were the names of losers and actually people who fought against the United States. So really, that to me should have been a no-brainer, as well as some of the others like Aunt Jemima and so forth. But the one that really got me, that was renaming of the bases, as well as taking down some of those statutes from the Confederate era.
Brian
I
Pluria?
think another thing that we need, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Brian.
Good, Brian.
Well, I think that, the other thing that's important is that if the businesses that you talked about, like Quaker and Pepsi, are serious, then they need to start reaching out to our consumers for their business instead of taking them for granted as they always have. Not only have they insulted us by their images, Uncle Ben's, Rice, and Aunt Jemima, but they just count on us going in there and buying their products, whether they advertise with us or not. They just assume Black people are going to buy their products. Yet they spend millions of dollars in the mainstream press asking people to buy their products. Come to us and ask us for our money. We have trillions of dollars available, just like everybody else, and come ask us and earn our business. It's about time that they start doing that.
Yeah, I totally agree with Brian. I mean, it has always been a problem and a challenge. And as most of you guys know, I'm a multimedia owner. We own some TV, radio, and print. And when it comes to when the web first came out, they lambasted us. You guys need websites. You need this. You need that. You need this. You need that. When I flipped the script to my TV side, we are not pressed to have a web presence. Now, obviously, we have a website and portals and things of that sort, but it is, a double standard, as it always is. We fight for share of business in the TV space. With Black newspapers, we have to fight to get on the buy to even be considered. And most of the folks that buy Black newspapers are, quite frankly, young white women that work for the ad agencies. And they have no clue about a Black, quote unquote, newspaper. I mean, if they may read at the time the Village Voice and some of the alternative papers, they may have an inkling of who we are. But ultimately, and Jim and Brian know this, and all publishers know this, the PR people love us because they want the free ink, But when it comes time for that same company that is bugging the crap out of us to put their press releases in, when we go to the other side and say, hey, why don't you spend some money on advertising? They go, who are you? Why would we spend any money with you? And it's the proverbial left hand does not know what the right hand is doing, or the right hand is being hidden. And it's a problem. And yes, they should flood us with advertising, because obviously we have to have money to hire reporters, editors, and now it's multimedia journalists that shoot video, that post and tweet, and as well as write. So this is a wonderful opportunity if they will seize it and actually put their money where their mouth is, as opposed to just rhetoric.
Yeah, and also to go along with that, Jim, Brian, Pluria, during the pandemic, we know that we lost advertisers, right? Can you speak to that too? Because you build these relationships, and then we hit a real hard time, and they pull out. What does that speak to the relationship between certain advertisers and the Black press?
Well, I speak out on that. You're right about the fact that they either suspended or paused advertising, and but here's the problem with the lockdown. For example, grocery stores made it didn't make much sense for them to advertise because, but the restaurants closed, that most of the grocery stores were so packed out. And of course, with the retailers closed down, that means that why advertise if you can't get customers? Mm-hmm. So basically, it created a bigger problem because even before the pandemic, most of the advertisers were abandoning print and moving their advertising online or television. And basically, they were putting us on the spot by saying they would prefer to go online. So this created even a bigger problem because it made it easier for them to say, okay, we want to do it online anyway. So I see this even as a bigger problem going forward because we don't really know if these advertisers will come back. Some of the retailers are going bankrupt. So one of the other items I wanted to bring up with other publishers on the line, because of that problem, what we tried to do, and this was suggested at NNPA conference, that we would solicit people to subscribe to our newspaper. And what gets me is that the churches were closed down, and our paper is delivered free to churches. So we put out that we would like for you to subscribe to our paper. We put on a token amount like $15 per year, $25 for 2 years. And we're not really getting the support that I think if you believe in the Black press, the least you could do is support us by purchasing a subscription. So I know in addition to the advertisers, but I think we need a little bit more support from our community as well.
Yeah, and feel free, guys, to ask questions of each other because you're African American business owners. You don't just, in many cases, like Pluria, you don't just have a newspaper. You have other businesses too. We want to keep the conversation going, but I do want Brian Townsend to weigh in on the same question.
Well, to be honest, I didn't lose any advertisers during the pandemic. And actually lost you. And we have retail advertisers, and it wasn't due to the pandemic that I was worried about losing advertisers. It was because our whole landscape is changing. And in fact, I did lose retail advertisers last year. And what has happened? And I just really want the other publishers to realize how entrenched we are in our own communities. The community takes that for granted, and we take that for granted. And during this, pandemic for the press, because we are really having a hard time with our business model, we have a lot of advocates out there. And so when my biggest advertiser tried to pull out last year, and they still may pull out, who knows in the end, they were it was a grocery store, and the community sent a wave of protest to them. They were sending letters, they were calling, we don't see your ads in our papers anymore. We don't know when to come in for your sales. You've been advertising for years, now you don't want our business. And so within a month, they turned back around and rejoined us. And so even during this pandemic, they never contacted me and said, hey, Brian, we need to stop a while. There's so many things going on, and this is an unnecessary expenditure. We never received a call like that. And in fact, we have helped defend them because, we sent out stories about how they've increased the wages of their workers because their workers are essential. We talk about the safety measures that they're doing in their stores and how they still want our business and how they're there because they know that we're suffering, that they're going to be there to be supportive of the community. So we've maintained that kind of partnership. And during the pandemic, we didn't lose any advertising. But I think it's a matter of us engaging with our community to make sure that they reach out to our advertisers. I never really had a problem with our circulation. Our circulation is based on our advertising. The more advertising I get, the more I can print. Because I never lose readers. We haven't lost our readership. Our circulation varies because I can't support the print run. So, as long as we realize that if we go after these advertisers and we can deliver for them, and if I have retail advertisers, they're the hardest ones to please they have to see a result on the bottom line every week. And they've advertised with us for years, multi-pages every single week. And so it's just really incumbent upon us to engage the community, make them aware of a situation. I literally wrote an editorial saying, hey, we make a lot of business. And people were, that's when you know that they really appreciate what we're doing, because we tell the stories of our communities. All this, even though there's a lot of mainstream coverage on the protests right now, the stories about the individuals that are being impacted in the protests, not the ones that are killed, but literally the families that are involved, people that are, these essential workers, nobody's telling their stories. You do have these good stories like that, the retired police officer that was killed in Minneapolis. He was protecting Target. He was in his 70s. He was working as a security guard. Well, that story needs to be told too. I know that there's we have a need for us to change systemic racism. But when you have a guy that served for 30 years and is still working in the community and the community loves him, you got to tell that story. There's good on each side, but now the story is, you're not a good cop unless you're helping get rid of your bad cops. That blue line of silence has got to go. And so it's not a matter of just saying, well, I'm a good cop. If you see somebody next to you, we've got to create a way for these police officers to engage them, to make them change their ways. And they're being attacked within their own departments. I get calls from black cops that want to do the right thing, and they're being ostracized in their own departments. I have white cops that have gone out on stress because they try to, install community policing, but they've been relegated to the basement of the department and nobody wants to deal with them. So community policing has been around for 30 years. I don't know what the president was talking about yesterday. The problem isn't the ideas or the concepts of community policing, is getting them implemented and having the department engage those concepts. So as long as we keep telling our story, as long as we are advocates for our community, we need to press on that and help them also engage with us as we pursue other advertisers. Because they will engage in that as well.
Yeah. And Pluria, you want to? We're being joined, by the way, by Munson Steed of Rolling Out. Welcome, Munson. We got to come back to you in a moment. Pluria, you want to weigh in on that?
Sure. I mean, we have had, Macy's was one that obviously had to pull back based on stores being closed and things of that sort. But I echo Brian's sentiment. We could print 1 million papers and distribute them if we had the advertising base supported. I mean, people love what we do. We're a community-based paper. We get the call like Brian gets from folks that want to do right. But when you are in the super minority within your sheriff's department or police department, it's hard. And look, I get and understand. Being a former athlete, you have a camaraderie amongst your teammates, and police, fire, sheriff's department, same thing. But ultimately, you have to have the ability to say, hey man, this is wrong. And I think it's worth noting with Mr. Floyd, those 3 other officers were on the job for 1 week, and they got a bad rogue cop that has destroyed obviously his life, killed George Floyd, and their lives will never be the same. But and a couple of guys said, hey, should we roll him over? Should we do this? Should we do that? No, it's fine. So ultimately, we are the conscience of America. Newspapers have always been that way. Black newspapers, massively so. Black newspapers have always had a larger than life presence within the Black community because, one, you really didn't have Black radio. You never had Black TV. You can say BT is Black. Yes, it was. Now it's owned by Viacom, but they've never really produced any news. We produce the news and information that affects our communities. And, that will probably never change, especially now. And if we can be treated, equal and fairly amongst the overall media landscape, we will survive. I think it's also worth noting we have not lost a black newspaper, and Brian, you can help me on this, as well as Jim, in probably 40, 50 years, because there's always somebody out there, a black businessman or woman, that will purchase a black newspaper. It happens. The white papers fold up shop, go away. But we just don't lose black newspapers. We don't.
Yeah, and to that, I want to introduce formally Munson Steed of Rolling Out Magazine. Rolling Out is an African-American owned entertainment and media company with a trusted and influential voice in the community. Rolling Out develops contemporary content on topics of lifestyle, entertainment, music, health, beauty, and business. The magazine and rollingout.com takes pride in owned content surrounding multiple topics, verticals to facilitate engagement amongst a community of millennial leaders. Munson Steve, thanks for joining us. We are talking about advertisers with the Black press and advertisers in general in a time of stress or distress. Some have pulled out, but as Brian has brought out, Brian Townsend has brought out, and Floria and Jim have also brought out that some have stayed. We wanted you to weigh in as well, Munson, on that. In a typical time, or distressing time, I should say. It's not anything typical about what's been going on these last few months, but how important is it for your advertisers, your partners, to hang on?
Well, gentlemen, I'd like to apologize for being late on the call. I think it's an interesting question, but I think the issue, given the time right now, Stacey, is all about those advertisers that we know their CMOs have not considered Black-owned media a priority. The question is for those CMOs to make it right now. Those CMOs from corporations who we know have lost integrity in our community. I think that's a real, true issue for us. And I think we've got to really, talk and create those new relationships with CMOs because, retail is not the same, but there have been gains in corporations like Zoom. There have been gains in corporations, food companies have done well while people are at home. There are brands that we consume as a community, and we are receipt shareholders. And we should demand that these corporations not just be vague in, as they say during this movement, that they're doing business with Black business. We need to make sure that there is a number, a KPI that relates to Black media purchase that every corporation commits to, Stacey. So that's kind of where my mindset is. And, I was working hard and just had Marvin Sapp on. We were having our lunch spiritual snack. And then I got a urgent text with an emoji from my dear brother Plurial. So I had to get home and tell Bishop that because I respect our industry and I respect our leadership. I just think today it is important for all of us to, we publishers, to focus on making sure we collectively right now look at CMOs that are not and do not advertise with Black media, point it out, begin to highlight that so that we know. I mean, literally, Plurial, Disney wrote off $500 million for Vice. Wrote off, Brian. Wrote off. Said goodbye to. So basically, at least 10% of that, Jim, 10% of what they wrote off should be a bet that we get for us, Plurial. Mm-hmm. Literally, if you're going to write it off as a loss, then somebody's, given that we never had the opportunity to get any, some of that should come back to us. Right. So I think that's more of where my mindset is. The current state, we're in a pandemic. But there is a food company, there's not been a soda company that has decided that Black-owned media is a priority. I love Black Lives Matter, but that's not a business. We employ people We employ content makers, and I think it's important. That's just the state of where I'm at. I want to meet more CMOs to know if they're real. I want to meet, I like having the president of Ben and Jerry's, but what is his commitment to advertising in the Black media? And we don't want kibbles and bits. We're not cats or dogs.
Right.
And Munson Steve, that's exactly why we had people like the CEO of Ben and Jerry's, and we had Mark Cuban of the Dallas Mavericks, because we felt they need to answer directly to you guys, the Black business owners. Just so our viewers will understand, Munson Steve mentioned CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, and KPI, Key Performance Indicators. And we do have some viewer questions. Ramon Vandenhoover, going back to what Pluriel Marshall was speaking about, he says, I appreciate the command about racism during soccer matches. Being European myself, I think the problem in America is much deeper. Many of those Black and colored players in Europe have an identity as they are from Kenya or Turkey or Morocco, and they are proud of that. But for American Black people, the problem is their identity has been taken. Their ancestry in America is no longer than many white folks, yet they are denied being an equal American. How can that issue be resolved?
Well, that is a problem that I joke and say, well, when we have peace in the Middle East, the rest of the world can probably take a breath and catch up. It is going to be a problem for us, ostensibly forever. We don't have access to capital, and ultimately that's it. If Brian, if Munson, if Jim, if Janice and Dorothy and everybody else had the ability to capitalize on the capital markets that would allow us to expand and grow, we would have a better than average chance of succeeding. And you're right, we were, slaves, hijacked, brought here, and it's a very interesting piece. The brother down in Montgomery that has the ostensibly the slave museum speaks eloquently on racism has never been addressed. It's never been truly addressed. And yes, we talk about reparations and things of that sort. And I think someone said it would cost $14 trillion to make Black people whole in the whole 9 yards. Well, we know that is not going to happen. But ultimately, much like the Jews will never let you forget the Holocaust, ever. If you say anything anti-Semitic, they are all over you. Black people, we have to bite our tongue. We have to hold our tongue. We have to turn our heads. We have to duck our heads. It's horrible, absolutely horrible. And unfortunately, this president really doesn't care about anything but himself. And ultimately, what we need to do, and people say, why vote? My vote doesn't count. Well, yes, your vote does count. And more importantly, what should happen is the presidential election is important, the gubernatorial, the senatorial, Congress. But I'm going to tell you where you focus. Judges. The judges are the ones who determine the fate of any one of us if we got stopped. And 9 times out of 10, almost 10 times out of 10, most of those judges are white men. And you are not going to get any empathy from them because it's just not there, unless they had some unique experience that caused them to have some affinity for Black people, or for that matter, people of color in general. You will not get that deference paid to you. And if we don't know anything, when you look at the folks on the street, they, their credibility is that they want to go to jail. Well, you're going to be judged by a white man and a white jury. And if we don't focus on the local judiciary, that is more important than the mayor, the police chief, and everybody else, because those are the folks who sentence you to jail, or to death or whatever. They're the ones who we should really focus on. And I know there's been a big push in Texas. I think specifically Houston, there's probably almost 24 Black female judges that have been impaneled. So, if I could leave our audience with anything, vote for one, and focus on your local judge races and judgeships and your Supreme Courts and your district courts and your circuit courts and things of that sort. By the time it gets to the Supreme Court, you're done. You're done. It's gone through all of our full system of the judiciary. So focus on judges, people. Please do.
Yeah, it's interesting, Fleur. Just Sunday, we had Camille Cosby on as our special guest, and she mentioned just what you just talked about, the importance of the judgeships and district attorneys and that level. A couple of other readers, Kelly, viewers, I should say. First of all, Robert McCrae. He says, I hope to see more Black youth voices in these kind of discussions. It's really their future that's at stake. And just so you know, Robert, we have two great panels of four each of young African Americans that are coming up next week. We'll keep you posted on that. Kelly Gordon says, and this is for any of the publishers. In fact, we'd like you guys to discuss this. Do you see police unions as a real-time barrier to any police reform that is to have any permanence? A great majority of them prefer to maintain the status quo and are resistant to change, which affects the ways in which police do business as usual.
Yeah, I can comment on that. Just like any other union, teachers union, what the police union apparently is doing, just like similar unions, they protect the rights of their constituents, sometimes to the detriment of the whole department. One of the things they talk about a lot is that when you have a bad policeman, and this happens in other professions, they are fired from that job, but they can go somewhere else and get another job. And until we change that culture that the unions have, and of course, people pay dues and they expect it to be the union to protect them. But I think when we talk about systemic, there's something that needs to be done again to get unions to understand that they're not helping the community by covering up. I'm going to use the word covering up, and that to actually look at those people and be more honest with them and the public. And I think in doing so, we will all benefit. But I do think the unions are a problem, and they will affect us going forward unless there is some sort of change.
Yeah. Munson, you want to tackle that?
Not really, but I think it's obvious that unions exist to preserve those individuals who are there. I think the uprising that we see is key. I think we have to be vigilant as we approach both the union and public policy in order to get anything changed. So I'm there. I clearly concur with Jim, but it's not unusual. I think what's unusual for most of us is how do we keep a lens on the change that we want to happen and continue to be more vocal and bold. I mean, I think there were way too many individuals that were surprised that our young folks took to the streets. Mm-hmm. There were way too many people that were cautious. They're looting. They had a whole different sentiment about their own people, knowing many of these people are oppressed. You know, many of them hadn't lived on the south side of Chicago, and the desperation that's in our community. It just boiled over, and we judged each other. So I think we've got to unify on our position clearly as it relates to police. But if you're not going to vote as a community, then you're going to be sitting in front of somebody you don't want to hear or be around. And I think Plurial literally pointed that out as well.
Yeah, I
go ahead, Plurial.
I totally agree with Jim. I mean, listen, man, the unions are a business, and they have a constituency, and they are going to serve that constituency, and that constituency is ostensibly, white male officers, and they are there to protect them. And unions, in some cases, probably have. I'm not going to say that they've fully run their course as far as what they should or should not be doing. Yes, they were originally put in place because the corporations and the robber barons just treated people like crap. There's no safety and things of that sort. But ultimately, as it relates to the police, those unions have ostensibly a fiduciary responsibility to do right, even if their members are doing wrong. And I mean, yes, it would be tough for a union boss to come down on the side of Black Lives Matter or any other movement. But, I mean, we have seen, as I said, the user-generated content that was taboo from advertisers is now, millions of hours of content is uploaded to YouTube every minute of the day, and so now we have all these unintended checks and balances that are in place that the police basically they've been outed. You cannot get away with anything now. I mean, I'm sure you guys saw the two teens that were harassed for jaywalking. How are you going to jaywalk if you got no sidewalks? So I mean, so it's things like this, and everybody has a camera. Everybody, So I'm not sure if we want to thank Steve Jobs or the folks over at Google and Android and things of that sort, but ultimately, thank you for providing an equalizer from a global standpoint. I mean, most of the video you see on TV, a TV crew can't get there fast enough. High quality cell phone video is as acceptable now as it's ever been. Look at what they did with the NFL draft. Those are on iPhones, and obviously very good software. So, we're at a point. You talk about the young people. My son works for me, and he came in. He said, "Dad, I can do your social media," because he does it anyway. So he does social media. He shoots video. He edits. He posts. He does all this. Every one of us needs to have some young folks. Because I mean, face it, we're getting a little long in the tooth. We're not quite out the pasture yet, but ultimately, we need the young people. We need to embrace them. We have the empirical knowledge that they do not, and we can help them succeed in ways. And if we collaborate properly, we will win. We can win, and hopefully, the communication schools will partner more with the Black press. I'm the chairman of our NMPA fund, which is our nonprofit, and we welcome interns. We welcome young people, even if you recently graduated. Come talk to us. We are your home. Come to us. Let us train you and provide you the basis that you need to succeed going forward.
Yeah, Jim. Pluria brought up the cameras and the videotaping, but we see that even in the aftermath of George Floyd, we are still seeing things on video that are happening. I mean, we see the case in Atlanta. There's many other cases that we're still seeing. Why is that still a problem with these officers knowing that they're going to be captured on camera? What's the deal with that?
I was going to bring up that Rayshard Brooks situation, especially with the focus on the police at this time. So I did want to ask the other publishers, based on the report, when I went back and looked where he had actually talked to the police, it was very friendly, and he said that he could walk home from there. He was sleeping in his car. This is what I really couldn't understand. And in most cases, the person could have been escorted home. I mean, they had his license. They knew where he was. So I really didn't see the problem with them allowing him to just leave after he didn't seem to be a threat. And then secondly, after they chased him, he had a taser. To me, I would think, okay, if he turns around, the officer could have stopped at that point. I didn't see it. It's not like it was a prison break. So when you mention the fact, this is something that we kind of wrestle with, because we ask the same question, actually. With all that's going on, why were these officers, not only those the ones who tease the college students and some of the other things they're doing, And I'm thinking in terms that when they talk about systemic racism, I think not just whites, but even a lot of black people who weren't in those situations finally realized that maybe there is a big problem that we need to look into. And finally, the both houses of Congress, the president put out this this sham of a executive order yesterday. But I think the focus is there. We just need to keep the pressure on. I think, as Plurius pointed out, the young people, in this case, I think will continue to put that pressure by going to the streets. And then maybe we'll see some significant changes.
Yeah, and Pluria, again, you did mention the importance of the young ones, and you mentioned your son. Is there any more young ones that you have in mind that you're working with, and how important? What message, more importantly, what message would you send to your fellow publishers who are watching? We have several watching, including your buddy Chris Bennett out in Seattle. He's watching. What messages would you send to your fellow publishers and NNPA about the importance of young blood, if you will?
Well, Stacey, we have interns every year. I mean, they basically run 12 months out of the year. You know, so we have an excellent editor in Greg Huskisson, who is a grammarian and a wordsmith. You know, we train young minds, and you know what's interesting about it is we get more young women than we do young men. And would love to have more, you know, black and, you know, brown guys to apply. You know, there is no substitute for youth. It's just not. You know, we have to have them. And what we find most interesting is they are so eager to learn. And in a lot of cases, the HBCUs do a decent job of providing a foundation for them. But ultimately, you know, we take them and we polish them up. We have not had one intern that has worked for us that has not been able to take the knowledge and information and skill sets that we impart on them and take that into the larger market, the general market, be it TV, be it radio, be it you know daily papers, you know, websites, because we don't feed you, we teach you. You know, we make sure that you have the requisite knowledge and information that's going to allow you to be the proverbial, you know, as the Bible says, you know, give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish, and he eats for a lifetime. And that's what we do. I mean, our folks are sprinkled all over Southern California, and it's funny because when I run into people at different events, you know, they say, I used to work for the Wave. I worked for the Wave. You know, so we train a ton of folks, and I would implore all the publishers to bring in. You got some young people in your family. You got some friends who have kids that are journalists or have a journalism degree or getting a degree. Bring them in. You know, they're young, they're smart, they're energetic. You know, we were all young at one point in time, and you know, we all wanted to do well. So bring them in. You know, they're not going to hurt you. They will enhance your operation, guaranteed. They will make you better. They will teach you things that you probably didn't want to learn, but learn them, do them. You know, I have a Twitter handle. Don't use it a whole lot. I watch and look at the feeds on Twitter every day. So, you know, reach out, please. You know, let these folks come in and help you. Now, obviously, you got to have your house in order when you bring them in, because we work our folks.
Yeah. Munson Steed rolling out, like Pluria and several other publishers, many other publishers. You know, you have a business model that's not just print. Can you explain your model? I know many publish weekly and distributed at no cost. Can you explain your model? And we'd like to ask each of the publishers that question.
Yeah, I think we're a content solution company now. Obviously, we do print. Obviously, we are able to do both video events. Plural has actually come to our events, our conference that we have. But I believe as a publisher, you're a content solution person. We've got a whole set of new shows coming that are intimate, that are inside the lives of Black culture, are in the lives of influencers in ways that media and content was not distributed in the past. We've got to encourage CMOs to give us the opportunity and the investment to understand that we have an authentic voice with an audience that you are looking for. So we have the solutions for your marketing objectives, for product launches, for many of your introductions, whether it be the African American female, if it's the African American male. So whether it's Head and Shoulders, whether it is Bounty, if it's an introduction, if it's a Netflix. I want our entire community to understand we have content solutions. And I say we, I think that's all of us in the NAACP, I mean the NMPA, have content solutions for marketers that are using other and leveraging other media entities that are not African American owned or Black owned. So for me, I just want to make sure that they see us as content solution providers. That's my 2 cents about our brand and how proud I am to be a member of the NMPA as we provide solutions and leadership to this community and to the nation.
Yeah, and Brian Townsend, we recognize that you are having some difficulties. We certainly don't want to leave you out of this important conversation. Do we have Brian now?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, so Brian,
I can't hear
Brian,
it.
we just asked. Okay, Brian can't hear
I've got
us.
to go.
Yeah, Brian can't hear you.
Okay, you got us. Okay,
You know what? I'd like to echo. Munson.
Go ahead.
We fought for a long time to get Munson into NNPA, and people were afraid of Munson because Munson has taken a print product and morphed it and twisted it and turned it, never abandoned it. But Munson has stuff. I went to his event in Atlanta. I was blown away. I mean, he has young folks. He's bringing in people that you could only dream of meeting. And I told him a couple of years ago, I said, Munson, I'm going to add it to my calendar. So when it popped up, I showed up, and.
No, that's not true. He didn't just show up. He bought a VIP package. He got on stage and talked unread. I mean, when you talk about collaboration, my brother flew out from California to come to Atlanta. And he got involved. He didn't just sit there, wait for something to happen. He engaged all the young people because 25% of our audience is Black students, giving our community access. And that's not many of them are going to see a CEO who owns television stations and many publications in LA. So they got access to a giant, which many of our young people want. So he didn't just say, hey, I'm out here to be at your event. He actually jumped in, got involved. So I want to thank you, Plural. It's very different. He didn't ask for no money back because he may not have got a goodie bag. He bought the highest ticket I had. And when you're working to build a conference, it's very difficult. And to have my brother's support was meaningful. I think it was Plural and obviously Dr. Chavis made it. But Plural was the one, because I don't think Dr. Chavis, he bought a package, but he didn't buy the VIP package. And Plural bought the VIP package, and we had great fun. I think the more we collaborate as publishers, the more we collaborate to target these individuals that are talking about spending billions and millions with Black business, we need to put a period on that and say Black media, Black owned media. because what we're noticing, at least I am, is there are CMOs that are suggesting, and ad agencies suggesting things that we can only lose on. Like, let's put all the money on Juneteenth. Every black dollar will be on Juneteenth. Now, we know that's a loss, but it has been the suggestion of marketers who are supposed to be culturally relevant, when we should be getting a 12 to 24 month.
Yeah, we're having difficulties with
these
okay.
corporations. Well, I'm on my
I'm
phone,
sorry,
it's
Munson.
blowing up. But nah, it's cool. I really respect Plural. I think this is the moment, and I really want to say, our ask has to be louder, Jim. You and I don't know each other as well as we should. I have Plural's cell phone number. It's my issue, but I want us all to figure out how we can collaborate and work better together and get those individual corporations in each of our cities to understand that 0 is the number we shouldn't accept from any corporation. If digital is the market, then you should be able to take some part of your digital budget and spend it with us. You shouldn't have
Jim, you want to jump in?
a custody officer that doesn't have a relationship with the black press. You got 5 Fortune 500 CEOs that are black, including the CEO of Merck.
Yep.
I mean, we have hello, call Plural. I'm not worried. Plural get to buy, I still get some. Yep. If Jim get to buy, I still get some. I mean, that has to be our tenet in this moment.
Yeah, I agree.
Jim?
Yeah, I was going to say, when Brian's not on, but when I was talking about the subscribers, I was talking about online, the digital space, because the model we're using now, print is slowing down. So we're trying to phase in with the online. So it's important that we get more and more eyeballs on our website and on our online edition. Therefore, we can go to advertisers and make those demands.
Yeah. One of our readers, Munson, is asking Ralph Shanks, and he says, I'm in Atlanta. How can I get access to the publisher who is outside the ATL? I would imagine he means, how can he get access to you, who's in the ATL? I mean, that's, if I'm reading it wrong, Ralph, please feel free to write in the question again. But Munson?
You know, I'm pretty accessible, other than Ralph, we're in a pandemic, man. So I'm really not meeting with people. But if we want to Zoom, or you think you want to Zoom, I'm here to Zoom. I think that when we you know, they're and Jason, they're just very obtuse code words when white people say black business. Like, you're not going to be transparent and say how that hits, which industries are going to get it in the black community. Then once again, we're not certain where dollars are going. So right now, when they announce we're doing business with black business, what does that mean? That's a loss for black-owned media, because black-owned media requires a lot of dollars up front. We provide a level of service like a hospital. We mentor and speak to the minds and souls of our community. And we make sure that we nurture through information the growth and the insight when we do a program like Health IQ, when we literally are talking to black epidemiologists to gain the attention of our community or address comorbidity. But when white people can say, or the corporations can say, we're doing with black business, and not one person on this screen can tell you who that is, that's a problem. That's like saying, I'm doing business with somebody, and I don't want to know that you're doing business with black people, and I don't know the black people you're doing business with. I mean, that's a trick. We've seen that trick. And we don't want the special Negro to be how you approach this.
But you are 100% right, man. What's interesting about that is, you know, when they say black media, and you know what, I'm gonna put our folks on blast over at the NAACP and National Action Network and Urban League, because they're like, give me mine. I got mine. Okay. Good luck, black newspapers. Good luck, black websites, because I got mine. What should happen is hey, man, this is great to give to Mark and Al and Brooks over at their respective, but they say, hey, man, if you give us $2 million, you need to give $2 million in NPA. Make it equal. What you get, make sure that we get ours, because trust and believe, we all get the quote unquote press releases from everybody, and they want our free ink. But when it comes time to put money in, as much as said, they're not going to do it.
And we want to know Pepsi CEO who wrote into Fortune.
Mm-hmm.
They were in Fortune. We want to meet with you. We want to know why your CMO has not met with the black newspapers, black media, black digital, black experiential, black content creators, black influencer networks. We have influencer networks that are on the billboard. We have all of that. But CEO of Pepsi, make sure that your advertisers, because you've oppressed us for the last 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
When you haven't invested in us. I don't want to hear about this. We doing business with this obscure, unknown black business. I want to know which businesses and how black media calculates in your spend. I don't want to see you, black Congress leaders, having these individuals on your military bases, government tax dollars, and we can't get a dollar in black media. I don't want to see Amtrak running and we don't have Amtrak ads. Fewer black agencies mean fewer black dollars to us.
Yeah, very true.
It's an interesting point, Munson Steed. We had a situation a couple of months ago doing one of these publishers live stream, and it came up that one of our publishers in the Black Press family had suspended publication for a moment. And another publisher reached out to take care of that and help that particular publisher out. So the question is, we have publishers of all sizes and stripes. Some are more successful than others. A point has been made about reaching out and networking. Are you three publishers that we are talking to now, are you doing anything specifically to mentor other publishers that may be struggling or could benefit from your advice and experience?
Well, I'll hop in quickly. So I have a pretty good relationship with everybody from Larry Lee in Sacramento to even our friend Dorothy Lavelle in Chicago. All publishers take my calls. I take their calls. And I have always said, I am more than willing to show you what I do and how I do it. I haven't always been in Los Angeles. I'm from Houston, Texas originally. I had a small paper in Houston. And I have always said, guys, have yourselves several different rate cards, one for local, one for regional, one for national, and put crazy rates on there. Put big rates, because at some point in time, somebody, and Jim has seen this, Stacey, you've seen it, Munson's seen it, some corporation's gonna screw up, and they're gonna come to Dr. Chavis and say, hey, we want to buy some advertising in the Black Press. If you have a local rate at NNPA versus having a national rate at NNPA, it's diametrically different, because there are more hands that touch the national business than touch local. So you need a fat rate. All right, all y'all listening, fat rate national, fat rate regional. Guarantee it'll work, because when they can pay and when they will pay, you need to be at the top of the food chain. And quite frankly, it's a little selfish from my standpoint, because I got fat rates. If your rates get fat, Jim, Munson's rates are already fat, then guess what? My rates don't look so bad. So, and this is not collusion. This is saying, hey, you need to qualify your value of your publication, of your newspaper, of your website, of your experience. Whatever you do, it needs to be qualified. So yes, Stacey, we constantly, work with publishers, talk to them until we're blue in the face, so that everybody can do well ultimately.
Yeah. Jim, out in Florida, there are a number of publishers out in Florida, like there is in Los Angeles. What's the collaboration like out there in the Sunshine State?
Well, we have an organization called the Florida Association of Black-Owned Media, and in meeting we sort of talk about best practices and try to help each other. But here in Florida, there have been some problem with some of the publications having to suspend because one of our largest grocery store chains at Pook has suspended their advertising, as well as some of the others. That's what I was bringing up earlier. But we do collaborate as publishers here in Florida as much as we can.
Yeah, and Pluria. So as we come up on a little over an hour into this program, as we begin to wind it down, we wanted to hear a little bit more about what the Wave newspapers are doing. What's coming up this week? What can we look forward to this week and perhaps even next week, if you can fill us in?
Well, I mean, Stacey, I mean, we're focusing obviously on what's happening with the protests, where things are going, voices in the community that have points to make. I quite frankly, I've not been in the office this week because I, like Munson, I'm staying as sequestered as I can. Obviously, I talk to my staff, every day. But we're Stacey, what we do this week versus what we did a year ago, we cover our community, and the communities that we serve. There's actually 88 cities in LA County. Right? So 88 cities in LA County. We within our footprint, we probably cover about half of those, and it's a massive area to cover. But we have a lot of freelancers that are able to, give us unique perspectives on kind of what's happening and what's going on. We don't take the easy way out. I mean, we have a very high standard that we put forth to our reporters and freelancers, and they pitch stories the same way you would pitch a story if you were at a daily. Stacey, you worked at dailies. The same thing with folks that worked in TV. They have to pitch stories to get the approval to go out and actually make it make sense. Obviously, we do have stories that we put forth to them that we want covered, but ultimately we're looking for the unique angle in any story that is either local, regional, or national, because as we all know, all news is local. It's all local. The incident that happened in Minneapolis started locally. The incident that happened obviously in Atlanta started locally. Now, obviously, these are what I call bubble ups. They go from local to national in a very quick fashion, and part of this is driven by social media. So these are things that we do. Nothing out of the ordinary. I mean, we think it's just business as usual. As long as you cover your community, serve them in a way that is genuine and authentic, they will support you. And if I could leave one thing with the folks that are on the screen, implore whatever you consume to be directed toward the Black press. You say, well, Pluria, what does that mean? Okay, well, if you shop at Walmart, you buy a car from AutoNation, you shop at Publix, you shop at any one of a number of outlets, call up the chief marketing officer, which Munson has mentioned numerous times. Call up the CEO and say, how are you supporting my Black press, my Black media, my Black websites? How are you doing that? Because in a lot of cases, the public has a massive, massive ability to spend. If you look at the way people affect change, and when you start voting with your dollars, you vote with your dollars, all of a sudden it's like, why'd our business drop by 15-20%? XYZ consumers say you're not supporting the Black press, so guess what? We're not going to support you. When you begin to pull the money back, everything changes. It is a game changer, guaranteed. And we have always been we cover what happens in America as it relates to Black people. We have always been nonviolent. We've been proactive. We've always been that way. And we continue to get our behinds handed to us because, we're not looting, rioting, and acting a fool. We're doing it the right way. So, consumers, talk to the brands that you consume. Tell them you need to buy, all Black newspapers, all Black websites, all Black. And trust me, as Munson opened up, that, what was it, Munson? You said $500 million that Disney wrote off?
Disney, $500 million.
$500 million. I guarantee you, if that write-off was deployed toward Black media, we'd be eating for a century or more, because we take that money and multiply it and ultimately be able to cover our communities even better than what we do now. Just think about it. We had a little bit more money versus the shoestring budget. We could actually get a whole shoe, versus just a string, So that's my 2 cents.
Well, it's a valuable 2 cents, Fleury, as always. We do this with our publishers every Monday, every Wednesday. You can tune in here and find 4 more of our wonderful, our hardworking business owners who are publishers of the Black Press. For each of you, we'll be wrapping up with one question, but it's just as a programming note, our tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, a continuation in the series of celebrating Black Music Appreciation Month. We've had some big time legends on the show, and tonight is no different. We have Rakim from Eric B. and Rakim fame tonight at 7 p.m. So tune in. So Jim, we'll start with you. We've asked this to other publishers. Black men and women and children are being murdered in the streets, as we know. And they are being murdered by people that are supposed to protect them. What can the Black Press do to save Black lives?
Well, we can continue to shine the light on these atrocities that are happening in our country. But one of the things I want to point out, and it's a little selfish, I guess, to say this, but one of the candidates on Vice President Biden's short list is Congresswoman Val Demings. And we've covered her ever since she was in politics. So one of the things that we are doing is trying to expose her more and more from our level here locally. But another item that we are also looking into, because we aren't getting information about COVID-19 from the national scale as we had done before, we try to keep our readers informed of what the latest information is to keep them healthy and safe here in Central Florida.
Great. And same question for you, Munson.
I'm not sure if you heard you, Stacey.
Are you with us?
I'm just kidding.
Munson, are you with us?
I mean, we're keeping it real with our community. We're working to continue to make cultural connections to empower those individuals that are on the streets. We've got some of the best coverage as it relates to cultural connections and this uprising. Obviously, we work with African-American epidemiologists and doctors each and every day and week to address the loss, both in COVID pandemic, this pandemic for African-American assault and murder that we've seen for the last 400 years in this country. And we work diligently to highlight and to upgrade our collective thought so that we all want the entire community to win and live their dreams. So that's what we do each and every second and every day for and with our community together. And we really work hard to make sure that we're sharing information that will give people access to a better life at Rolling Out.
Yeah. And Fleury, again, Black men and women, children being murdered in the streets by people that are supposed to protect them. What can the Black press do to save Black lives?
You know, Stacey, that is a loaded question. I mean, we can provide as much knowledge and information as possible. One, the community has to, want what we have, accept it, heed the warnings and challenges. But I would say, and this is very simplistic, but when I watched the dialogue with Rayshard and the police officers, I think he did an excellent job. I mean, he did everything right. The struggle at the end I didn't quite understand, but he was impaired. I would implore, if you get stopped by anybody that's in law enforcement, man, listen, eye contact, maybe pay the officer a compliment. Officer, how's your day going? Great, fantastic. What can I do to make this an easy stop for both of us? If my license is in my pocket, officer, can I get my license? And listen, I know this is not going to solve a ton of problems, but try to be as cooperate fully, all the time. Folks will say pluri, it's overly simplistic. There's got to be more to it. Until that officer sees, because they have to size you up in a matter of seconds, that you are not a threat. Rayshard was not a threat. He was not a threat. And he said he could walk to his house. Say, officer, can I walk to my home if I'm inebriated, if I'm whatever, And the other thing that I don't think anybody has ever said, at least I haven't seen this, and it's something that someone in law enforcement said to me. If you're stopped by a police officer and there is a problem or an issue that you do not feel as though you and an officer can solve, request the sergeant on duty, request the watch captain. Make the request. Officer, we obviously are not seeing eye to eye. Can you please call your supervisor? Can you call your boss so that we do not have this escalate into something that it should not be? Now, listen, people, think about this, okay? You're asking for the officer, you're not combative, to ask his supervisor to show up and come out. At that point, in this, I know we're running a little bit long, this happened to me with some friends in Palos Verdes, California, New Year's Eve. We got a call that our music was too loud. Now, we all old people. We got a DJ in the backyard. And the officer came to the door, was quite frankly rude to the homeowner. And I stood there and I listened. I just listened to him interact with her. Her husband was there. But, he has a bit of a temper. So we said, okay, fine. Let's just let the wife have the conversation. And when the officer got ostensibly belligerent, I said, where's your watch commander? Where's your captain? And he looked at me. It was like, oh, I said it again. The second time I said it, he backed up. He stepped outside. He called his watch commander, his watch captain, whoever was on duty. And when the officer, the manager on duty, the sergeant came, we had a very different conversation with the sergeant because then his boss is there. Now, will everybody have the ability to do that? You can make the request. The video will be there. Someone's going to have a camera and they're going to be taping what's happening, what's going on. Make that request. Yes, can the Black press put that in writing? Of course we can. Can we do a how-to video? Of course we can. But ultimately it's on you as the citizen of the United States of America to know your rights. Your vote counts. It matters. Get out and vote. Be a part of the process. These young people that we thought were asleep at the wheel are fully woke. They are woke and they are going to continue to protest. Now we have to change policy. So, my comments are always be respectful. Do what you're supposed to do. They got a gun. You don't. but just ask for that officer's, watch commander, captain, sergeant, whoever's in charge. Just ask them, if you, who's in charge, sir? We're having a problem. There's also an app that, that you can tell Siri, I'm being pulled over by a police officer. And there's a process you have to go through to set up all the triggers in case something goes awry when you get stopped. But yes, Siri can help you. I'm probably sure Alexa can as well. So, we need everybody to stay woke, stay alive, be smart, be intelligent. We spend $1 trillion a year on goods and services. Talk to those chief marketing officers, those CEOs, so that we can continue to cover the Black press for another 175 years.
That was the most thorough and reasonable answer we've heard to that question. Pluria Marshall Jr., we thank you. Pluria with the Wave Publications, James Madison, Florida Sun Review, Munson Steed of the great Rolling Out magazine, rollingout.com. We thank you. And we thank you all for watching. And we say it all the time, stay safe and stay well. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Stacey. Thank you.
Jim.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Munson.